Today we'll reach Calgary, Alberta in Canada to meet Jacqueline Eenkooren, 2-time award winner problem solver in open innovation realm. Jacqueline is 26 years old and she is currently a graduate student at the Center for Military Security and Strategic Studies at the University of Calgary. She is currently researching innovations in intelligence analysis. She started participating in crowdsourcing through open innovation platform insatiable.com in 2011, and she won on her first attempt. She works as an assistant researcher in her field of study at an off-site branch of the Library and Archives for the University of Calgary. Jacqueline holds a bachelor's degree in military and diplomatic history. She has worked as an artist, medical assistant, and music instructor. She developed herself as a musician by learning flute, tenor saxophone, guitar, and voice. Jacqueline has invested a lot of time in volunteering. She has a wide range of experiences, including coordinating a major regional fundraising event and a year spent working on an understaffed surgery ward. When she is not working, she enjoys spending time in nature and with animals, pursuing creative endeavors and learning as much about the world around her as she can. Jacqueline has had a long-standing passion for solving problems and an insatiable search for learning. She is always looking for new challenges and brainstorming her own project. Jacqueline won 2 open innovation challenges, and her winning solutions address 2 major problems: raising treatment rate for hepatitis C and models motivating and supporting altruism within communities. There is a time difference bridge of 9 hours to reach Jacqueline in Canada. Let's take the shortcut and meet her now.
Right here is where I live, it's where I breathe. It's where I feel every moment going by. It's where I've come to feel the sun and the freedom of this endless open sky. And I'm here, yeah. And I'm right here, yeah. It's where the dream has got some hope of coming true. I take a chance and join the dash and feel there's nothing out there that I couldn't do. And I'm here, yeah. And I'm right here, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Good morning, Jacqueline. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Good evening to you, Georgia, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this. I'm very excited.
Your field of study is a very complex and challenging one. Did you always know what you want to do in life?
I never knew specifically what I wanted to do, but I was always motivated to do the same type of thing. How it manifested just changed with time. So it's always been important to me. It sounds cheesy to make an impact on the world. So I've always been interested in protecting, preserving, and making life better. So initially when I was a child, I was interested in actually working with animals. And for most of my childhood, I thought that that's what I would do. I've always had a deep love and admiration for them. And so I always thought that I would do something in wildlife preservation or natural ecology. As I got older and started to understand the world more for what it was and experienced my own challenges and saw people around me going through difficult things, my heart turned more to what I could do for the people around me, for my community. And so I started volunteering and exploring new fields to see where I would possibly be able to make the biggest impact, where I would be able to help the most. So I began with volunteering in ambassadorial roles and boards for social awareness and that type of thing. And then eventually I became interested in medicine. So I started volunteering on a surgery ward and getting involved in fundraising. I worked in a medical center for a while. And as I was doing that, I realized how much of a role policy actually has in the success of treating somebody or helping someone, especially when I was volunteering on an understaffed surgery ward. And so I set my sights towards how I could work in policy. So initially I started in business because I thought that having a business mind would be helpful for understanding where organizations and governments are coming from. And then as I realized that that probably wasn't the right fit, I moved into economics and found that that was too abstract. And along the way, I had been taking actually history courses just for interest. And I realized at that point what the skill set that it was giving me in terms of critical analysis and understanding my own biases and perceptions, and the study of figures throughout history and points of crisis that were to understand where they were coming from a decision-making point of view, understanding their mistakes and their successes became, for me, something that was very important in terms of understanding what kind of difference I could make and how I could make those choices wisely. So eventually I got my degree in military and diplomatic history, my bachelor's, and that's what led me onto this path. That and a combination of the work that I had done previously, especially in medical environments, which gave me an appreciation for being able to function and stay calm in a chaotic or crisis environment. And since then, I have found that continually that's the type of environment that I thrive in. So that's what directed me towards my intelligence studies and more broadly security studies, and it's what I hope to do in the future.
It was a challenging journey. Do you feel that this journey through your own diversity of talents, skills, and callings made you a successful problem solver?
I think that some of the things the skill sets that I acquired and some of the things that I pursued were helpful in a way, but I don't attribute success entirely. I think that having a broad range of things that you specialized in, so for me, that was music and art and medicine and writing, and now what I do with security studies, scientific interests that I've had in the past. All of those things, starting from scratch and learning about the discipline, allows you to understand the train of thought and kind of the research methodologies of each of these fields and appreciate these paradigms of thought while still being able to learn how to combine them and work outside of them, which I think was important for thinking innovatively and creatively. But certainly what it took to pursue all of those things, and then in my own personal life, what it took to face challenges or adversity when things felt impossible, which is exactly what it takes to innovate, I believe. It's 99% hard work and perseverance and discipline. So I think it has more to do with making those choices either day to day about how you're going to move forward, if you're going to be a victim of circumstance, or if you're going to give up on something because it's difficult. I think it has a lot to do with making those choices, although those skill sets enrich my understanding and perspective of what I study, and again, were important for me. Developing those skills I needed to be the person I am today in the field I'm in.
Do you think diversity in an individual is in its favor or not when it comes to being hired by an organization?
I think that it's intimidating. I think that organizations typically look for a very linear path, a path that they understand of promotion and projects and success. I think that a lot of organizations don't appreciate how a diverse background can help you think differently, or why thinking differently is positive for their organization. I think they might see that as subversive for their bureaucracy or for their way of doing things. But so, yes, in my personal experience, I think I've experienced that people do not necessarily appreciate the wide range of experience. So.
Music and art are important parts of who you are. How do they shape the person that you are now, and how did they influence your problem-solving skills?
That's an interesting question. Especially because I spent so much time developing my interests in a number of artistic fields, both participating and consuming those forms of media have been important for me. I've always gravitated towards books, movies, etc., that challenge my way of thinking, or broaden my perspective on the world. And those things that tend to open up outside of the paradigm of the way that you think were very important for me. And those are the things I continue to seek out, and because those things help to challenge my understanding and the way that I can, given my experience or my life, can be prone to falling into a trap of simply trying to contextualize a problem through my understanding. So reading those types of things, watching those types of things can really help break you out of your own limits. And I think even as somebody who maybe is creative or who is good at innovating, that's easy to do, especially when you do find success. It's easy to go, oh, this is the model that works, and just continue to repeat that instead of continuing to challenge the way that you think and solve.
You are also a musician, as far as I know. What instruments do you like to play at?
When I was a child, I was classically trained as a flautist. And then after that, I picked up tenor saxophone, guitar, and learned to sing.
What project are you working on now?
Currently, I am working on my thesis for my master's degree. So my project is in innovation in intelligence analysis. And this is something that actually through my experience problem solving through open innovation has given me some insight into how I can create my own project like this, and even given me the direction for my project. It is relevant to my previous work.
Having a look at the past, what were the closest to your heart projects? What were their challenges, their purpose, the outcomes?
In terms of open innovation, the two that I won were actually very close to my heart. I personally invested in those a lot. It's interesting because when I was solving, and the first challenge that I attempted, I won, and then the second one, I won, and I actually found myself getting a little bit cocky. Although I was trying to take on projects that I cared about, I still felt like, oh, maybe I have something intrinsically to offer through problem solving. And so I started attempting all of these other problems. And I found that when I wasn't investing personally as much time and energy, and even just my own sense of value of how important this problem was to solve, that I wasn't, even though I thought I was producing the same quality, I don't think I was. I think it's putting that piece of yourself into your work. It's internalizing the value of it and actually putting yourself in a position where you really care about the outcome of it. So I would say that I've learned that lesson, and now every project that I take on, I try to find the value in it and work towards fulfilling that value.
That's very generous, no?
I don't know. I think it's just, why am I here? Why am I doing this? I want to be able to serve. I want to be able to protect. And this has been a very, very positive way of doing that. And also breaking me into new fields that perhaps were very, very intimidating in the past. It kind of gave me the confidence to move into what I do now. It's very humbling to understand the scale of the way some of these problems affect people. and how your solution may make a difference.
Let's talk about the awarded solutions and about being a problem solver in open innovation. What were the problems you successfully solved in open innovation? The ones your solutions were awarded by the seeker organizations?
The first was raising treatment rate for hepatitis C, which was a continent-wide strategy for increasing cooperation and adherence to treatment regimes, improving screening, novel threat analysis of new infection points for potential screening in the future, and creating an engagement plan for the social, medical, and political communities to mobilize for more effective treatment of hepatitis C and bloodborne disease. So that involved a lot of research and considering of the various medical systems throughout Europe, and trying my best to empathize with all parties involved, as well as destigmatizing the treatment itself. The second challenge that I was awarded was motivating models for altruism within communities, which was about improving the quality of life for informal caregivers or people who take care of disabled or sick relatives themselves, while maintaining or improving the quality of care for their dependents without increasing costs to the medical or social system. So that one involved understanding a lot of research into what these people are actually struggling with and appreciating the value of what they do in terms of taking strain off of the social system, usually at tremendous social and financial cost to themselves. So what we do to improve their quality of life, and did my solution actually improve the quality of care given to their dependents with extra costs to the social system.
Many people don't realize the real dimension of the gap between the project criteria and the complexity of solving a problem. What do you feel about this difference in people's perception?
I think it's kind of an unfortunate miscommunication that happens fairly often in open innovation. I think that it can be partly from seekers wanting to see what they can get out of crowdsourcing, kind of experimenting with these problems. So I think sometimes they use an opportunity to crowdsource to kind of fish for ideas, and unfortunately that makes it hard to specifically address what they may actually be looking for, because a lot of us have the ability to put together very defined proposals to address their issues, and simply are valuable for more than just brainstorming.
How did the solutions to your awarded problems come to you?
You know, like I said before, there were things that I did internally invest in, and certainly my experience in the medical field previous to solving those challenges gave me a lot of personal appreciation for that kind of suffering and pain and chaos. So I think that for inspiration, I was drawing on those previous experiences. But in terms of solving the problems practically, a ton of research. I put in a great deal of time and energy into these solutions. And empathy. That's one of the things that I think is underplayed in policy development, but it's actually something that I've noticed and appreciated as important in my studies of leadership and command in my field, is that the ability to empathize and understand as best that you can motivations, or even just the kinds of circumstances that individuals are facing, why certain parties may have fought the kind of proposal that you are trying to enact at this point. Understanding all sides while still trying to appreciate and put first the needs of the people that are most vulnerable and the needs of the people that are actually going to put this policy into practice. So that's it for me, essentially. There's a lot of research, a lot of time critically analyzing the research, researching even just what questions I need to ask in terms to further my research, and then through that, actually empathizing with the content and with the people behind it.
Who are the seeking organizations?
In my case, both of them were anonymous. I never learned formally who was behind both of the challenges that I successfully solved for.
And how can you make future employers or working partners to understand the value of our worthy solutions when we don't know who we worked for?
It's very difficult. I think especially because most organizations don't have an appreciation for open innovation or crowdsourcing. They don't really know what those things are. So it often involves actually sitting down and trying to explain the value in it itself. But in terms of if just what's on your CV or your resume, you're kind of left hoping that they will appreciate it as a value, perhaps as an award without understanding where it comes from, or that you can direct them towards the website so that they can further understand what you've done. But generally,
it's difficult. When did you start to solve problems in open innovation?
August of 2011.
Why did you start solving open innovation challenges? How did it happen?
For me, I started solving open innovation challenges a couple of weeks after one of the greatest losses in my life. Actually, I was despairing at that point in my life, and actually was just kind of browsing online. I'm a big science buff, so I was reading popular science online at the time, and I found an ad that they were hosting a challenge through innocentive.com, and I kind of looked at it and went, wow, that's really cool. Look at this. The idea that there's this is merit-based problem solving, that anyone in the world can provide an answer. And at the time, it was so intimidating. It was so big. I had no expectation to win, but I just put everything I had into it. And at that point, I think I found out about Innocentive 8 days before the challenge that I started working on was to end. So I put in like a week of at least 14-hour days of researching and writing. And at the end, sent in a 45-page policy proposal, and couldn't have imagined that I would win and then have the opportunity to directly affect the lives of hundreds of thousands of people and indirectly hundreds of millions.
That's impressive. Do you still solve problems coming from open innovation in present?
I'm open to it, but I'm not really solving any. Part of the problem is that the types of problems that I solve are, again, they're policy and security related. So you need the supply for the demand for solvers. So I'm finding that a lot of the challenges tend to focus on technical, scientific, industrial issues, and they're less and less policy driven.
What are the motivation, the intentions that drive you towards problem solving? In open innovation, I mean.
The number one, by far, again, is the opportunity to help people. Honestly, to make a difference, as cheesy as that sounds, it's the ability to solve for something that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to outside of your network, or outside of the way that people perceive you, your level of professionalism or your status or anything else. None of those things limit you in crowdsourcing. It's simply the merit of your solution. What better way to make a difference if those opportunities are there? It excites me in the same way it did the first time I heard about it, that how revolutionary this process could be. I think the second thing is that because open innovation still is a rather untapped field, that everything that we do to participate in it, to talk about it, to share about it, does have an impact on the way that the field evolves. I think that for every success that we have that establishes or reinforces how important or helpful crowdsourcing can actually be in solving problems and hopefully building efficacy for a stronger, industry in the future. I think that even every time maybe we downplay it, we undermine the potential in crowdsourcing as well. I think that as solvers ourselves who have won multiple challenges, if we can talk about it, that we will actually have a significant influence on where this industry goes. And I think that for people that perhaps are even just interested in it, that their decisions, whether or not to become involved in it, whether or not to experiment with their organization in crowdsourcing, all of those decisions come into it. And I think that's interesting to be part of an innovative field, being on the cutting edge of that. That's pretty exciting, having an effect on it. And I think the third thing would be just learning. I love learning constantly. I never want to stop. I never want to stop learning. And so every challenge I take on, I never know everything I need to know to solve it. So taking the opportunity to research and understand new things and broaden my perspective. And I actually really enjoy that.
It's like a new journey, like taking a new journey.
Yeah.
How many solutions did you architect and send in the open innovation process over the years?
I think probably 8 or 9. And then I started some that I didn't finish just simply due to time constraints.
Who should consider becoming a problem solver in your opinion?
I think that anybody who feels passionate, who feels that there is something worth working through pain or exhaustion or anything for, if they find something, if they find a challenge that speaks to them, that they should absolutely pursue it. I think that it's a very intimidating thing to take on. When you read it, when you hear it, it sounds very impressive and out of reach, especially for the scale of some of these challenges. But I think that if it's something that you're willing to work hard for, it doesn't matter. It's completely worth attempting because you always improve the process just by participating. So if you honestly care about the problem that you're solving, creating competition is positive. You personally learning more about it is positive and may actually help you in the future in your profession or in your pursuits. So it's always worthwhile. And I also think that people who spend a lot of time daydreaming, brainstorming, this is actually a really good way to harness some of that energy into something productive. I think that anybody who can work independently and is interested either in innovation or can self-initiate their own projects. This is something that you should at least attempt. I think even if you don't continue it, attempt it, because you never know.
Let's talk about open innovation and crowdsourcing now. What is crowdsourcing?
Crowdsourcing is when an organization, a government, or the like, has a problem and draws on the resources of a voluntary group of participants or the crowd to attempt to solve the problem.
How big should the crowd be?
I think that the crowd should be as big as possible. I think that although that increases competition and that might put some people off, we might also get better responses to some of these problems. I think that there's also room for scales of challenges. So perhaps people on a municipal level could try to solve problems or inquiries of their city or their town as a group. And then the best solutions were, even if it's something like anything from a city budget to a piece of public art, that crowdsourcing has value at that level. And then, as we know currently, that it has a lot of value at the corporate level and at the national and international level. So I think that, you can have defined groups that work for crowdsourcing that are perhaps smaller, but I think that there's also a lot of value in opening that up and getting perspectives from as many different people, from as many different backgrounds, with different experiences from all over the world.
And from the other side of the equation, What's open innovation for problem solvers?
I think even at this stage, it's an opportunity to show what you can do, even if it's not understood very well. But it's also a good opportunity to challenge yourself. And of course, there's financial incentive to participate as well in any of these challenges. Even if it's not great, it's still something that, on an individual basis, has a lot of potential for growth and improvement of quality of life.
In your opinion, what are the ramifications of crowdsourcing for the public and for innovation?
I think that crowdsourcing is very interesting in terms of democratic process. The idea of a merit-based solution really is democratic in and of itself. The idea that you can take from anybody, it doesn't matter their status or their recognition that they received through promotion or the benefits that they've had in terms of privilege growing up or from where they are, that it's the best solution that addresses an issue most aptly and isn't essentially limited to rank or promotion. So I think that the ramifications for this, if crowdsourcing is adopted or appreciated on a much larger scale, is increasing scales of efficiency, essentially.
What sectors do you think could benefit the most from expanding their use of crowdsourcing?
Personally, I see the value the most in policy, humanitarian, and crisis response security. That's partly because that's where my focus is, and also because a lot of commercial industries, like big pharmaceuticals, for example, are seeing a lot of benefit from crowdsourcing themselves. So they're actually dominating certain sectors of the crowdsourcing market. And I'm not seeing personally a lot in terms of policy or soft problems. And I think that there's a lot to gain from those, especially because they are intuitive, they are sensitive. So getting, again, as many perspectives as you can, as many different sets of eyes and minds on these problems as possible, I think could be very beneficial for breaking out of kind of chronic issues that we have on national and international levels and addressing them perhaps outside of the limits of an organization.
But why do you think the non-for-profit and non-governmental organization don't use more the open innovation platforms? It's such an opportunity for them, as you already said. What stays between them and open innovation?
I think that bureaucracy is very hard to break out of, and all of this is a risk, essentially. Crowdsourcing is a risk. You could invest your money and resources into trying to find a solution through crowdsourcing as opposed to another avenue and come back with nothing. On the other hand, you could come back with something that is phenomenal and you wouldn't have been capable of producing simply within your organization with the limits that you have. But there is that initial investment, there's that trust investment, and there's the financial investment. And I think that there is a reluctance to break out of those things. Also, I think when you do have a bureaucracy and everybody does have a specific job, you don't want to threaten those jobs within. And so I think that's unfortunately one of the things that crowdsourcing can be seen to do, is threaten stable jobs with short-term contract jobs. And I don't think that that is at all what crowdsourcing should do. I don't think that it should replace conventional workforces at all. However, I think that when we're dealing with issues, especially that affect people in crisis situations or would improve governance or decrease public expenditure costs on other things, that it would be a huge benefit. But I think part of the reason is that sense of threat or destabilization, and the sense that it's still experimental. I think that that's part of the importance of projects like yours, your very innovative project, which is about having this discussion and saying, this is what we can do for you. This is why it's worth any risk that you feel.
How do you feel about open innovation market? Do you think it will evolve? Will the present model survive? Does it have a future?
I think that it needs to evolve. I think that it has to. I see from what I observe now, again, the technical, scientific, and industrial issues are really dominating in terms of what kinds of organizations are adopting crowdsourcing, and that's fine. But I think part of the issue that they have with just stagnating, kind of in those industries.
What things should or could be improved when it comes to open innovation problem solving?
I think that, again, improving the advertising of what open innovation does to potential seekers in terms of what kinds of problems we can solve, what kinds of problems are worth experimenting with. And I think for the solvers as well, finding as many pavilions, a diverse range of pavilions as possible to put out the message of what crowdsourcing is. It's important, what the benefits can be of participating, why it's worth the investment. I think there's more value in promoting what we can do for each other, rather than simply looking for organizations saying, this is how we can solve your problem. And part of that is improving communication between the solvers and the open innovation platforms and the seekers, and what the solvers need to adequately solve their problems.
Would you like to, or would you have liked for the seeker that awarded your solution to engage in its development further?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think once you've invested that energy into something, you would love to see it through. You would love to be part of it and making sure it is successful.
But why seekers don't do that? Why seekers don't reach out the solvers they award and don't engage them in the process of their awarded solution development? What kind of motivation do you think they need?
Part of the issue is that seekers are afraid of revealing a lot of information about themselves, vulnerabilities within their organizations, projects that they're working on, tipping off competitors. I think that if we can provide more advice, if open innovation platforms can provide more of a service in terms of how they can sanitize information that they put out, or perhaps have contract deals where at the end of it, the seeker, since the seeker is allowed to know the identity of the solver at the end of the challenge, if the solver is allowed to see the identity of the seeker at the end, then it doesn't need to be public enterprise necessarily, but is something that that person can still benefit from in some way when they move forward.
How do you think innovation will be done in 10 years from now?
I hope that it continues to evolve onto grander scales and becomes a much more streamlined public process, that it isn't something that is seen as an industry and is something that is just seen as a normal part of research development. That crowdsourcing, not simply solutions from people, but ideas from people about potentially what things we need to explore in the future, or what questions we need to ask. Have people collectively vote on what's important to them to pursue.
If you were to have a premonition about it, to project the future, what's the next thing after open innovation?
That's hard to say. It's like asking, how do you innovate after innovating? And I hope that, again, kind of like what I've mentioned before, that open innovation decentralizes and becomes more of a common practice done on many different levels. and perhaps that there would be organizations that cater to specific levels of those things, but that governments could crowdsource for themselves on different levels. That corporations perhaps being crowdsourcing through their own pavilions, and that open innovation platforms advertise for all of these other companies of who is doing what, so that people can go and engage in challenges that they're interested in themselves, instead of all collectively coming to one organization and filing through dozens, maybe hundreds of challenges that may not relate to anything that they can do. I think anything that streamlines the process and makes it easier for people to get involved initially is important, and I think how it will need to evolve to grow.
How has becoming an awarded solver changed you as a person? How did it influence your becoming? What changed in your life after your solutions were awarded?
Personally, it was mostly what it did for me as an intellectual. Gave me obviously a lot of confidence in my ability to move forward and pursue the things that I was interested in. In terms of my professional life, it didn't have as much of an impact as you might assume. Again, although people appreciate that I have won awards for my work, they don't understand what it is. So certainly nobody has been seeking me out for jobs or consulting or anything like that as a result. Because you notice even when you are using like professional crowdsourcing apps and things like that, there isn't even an obvious place to put your projects or your successes for people to seek you out. It's something that you kind of have to build into a conventional model of success.
What are your questions for the audience of this material, for the world?
My question to people that don't have an opinion about crowdsourcing would be, why do you think this is something that we are pushing so hard? Why do you think that we see value in this? For people that are interested in participating in crowdsourcing, I would say, think critically about what motivates you, and then if that's so, do you think that this is something that you could follow through on? If it is, pursue it. I would say for businesses, for corporations, for universities, I would ask, do you see this as something that is simply a social experiment, or do you see the future of your business or organization in crowdsourcing? And if you do see it in crowdsourcing, do you see it in identifying individual problem solvers, or do you see it as utilizing the crowd indefinitely?
Very good questions. Good subject for research, if you think about it.
Yes.
What's your message to the world? Let's start with what's your message to human resource professionals and headhunters?
I would say, don't be afraid of broad experience and things that, or experience that doesn't fall into a conventional model of professional work, that take the time to understand the person and the way that they think and learn what they can offer for your organization. Perhaps appreciate that problem solvers are actually high risk takers in some ways, because we take on these projects, we invest a lot of our time and energy into them, and we have no assurance that after dozens or 100 hours of work or more, that we will actually have any financial payoff for it. So we are very project oriented. We're probably more likely to respond to an opportunity to solve a problem than to necessarily stick around and simply maintain a solution for years after that. That we're very problem oriented, and we want to be in positions where we get to continually solve problems. That's where we thrive. And I think that you run the risk of people getting board and leaving and trying to find new problems to solve if you just try to put them in a traditional track. And for headhunters, I would say probably just look at whatever pavilions that you can to try to find these people. You probably need to go through the open innovation organizations themselves, and that's something that's on OI as well, to kind of promote people and their skill sets that they have. So,
what's your message to CEOs, decision makers, organizations leaders from all over the world? What would you say to the decision factors?
I would say that crowdsourcing is worth the risk. Taking the time to experiment, putting aside resources will absolutely be worth your while in terms of policy or product improvement and innovation. I think it is intimidating, and it doesn't have to change your organization. It can just improve the way that you solve problems. I think that having more tools should just enhance. So taking on crowdsourcing as a new method doesn't have to threaten your organization, but can be something that simply enhances the way that you solve problems and perhaps gives you new pathways to innovate, because you have a new group of people from all over the world that can now give insight and perspective into your organization.
What's your message to educational system, to the leaders of worldwide universities?
Academic institutions have a lot of hegemony in terms of knowledge production and acquisition. It's an incredible gift, but most of the world doesn't have access to the materials that you have. So as a crowdsourcer, it can be a little bit difficult to find all of the information that we need to effectively solve these problems. Now, I understand that the information industry isn't something that's easy to change, but at the same time, I think it's important at least to reconsider the types of people that we let into these institutions, that we broaden the range of the kinds of experiences and knowledge and motivations of people that are accepted as faculty or recruited as students, that people who are research oriented in ways that they're motivated to improve the world around them, they have specific problems that they want to address, that simply a very, very linear academic path in terms of success doesn't necessarily constitute the best solvers. I was not a star student in high school or anything like that, and here I am here now. And so it's not a function of the traditional way of measuring success. So I think that understanding that there are different ways of knowing and producing very relevant and very important material, and giving those people more opportunities, not simply looking for the traditional academic set, but looking for the perseverance and the motivation behind what people are interested in doing and making sure they can realistically do them. I think that also academic institutions have incredible intellectual resources all concentrated in one area. I think that it would be very exciting if institutions were willing to become more involved in their communities, take the resources that they have on campus and crowdsource to help solve their regional or municipal problems. I think if they could have partnerships with their cities, provinces, states, wherever you are, I think that would be an exciting innovation, and actually provide opportunities for your faculty and staff to gain more experience and become more effective problem solvers when they hit the workforce.
What would you say to the leaders of open innovation platforms?
We need to communicate more effectively as seekers, solvers, and OI leaders. We need to have more of a dialogue of what the solvers need to effectively solve problems, to meet all of the criteria, and to seekers to bring in more types types of challenges, to broaden the horizons and help narrow down the kinds of things that when an organization comes to them, that they can say, these are the limits, these are the critical limits of what we can do, so that organizations feel that they can come to them and get advice, that they don't need to figure out what the limits are of crowdsourcing, that open innovation leaders can provide that kind of guidance in terms of what can be done. And then simply providing that a continuous dialogue in a way that continues to improve the experience and the results for everybody, which I think will benefit everybody involved.
What's your message to problem solvers and to worldwide talented professionals?
Always find value somewhere in any project that you take on. Being personally invested in that allows you an element of perspective and insight that can't be overlooked. I think it's important to always put more into your project than you anticipate that you will in the future. That continually researching, learning, and broadening your horizons will only make you a more effective problem solver and professional. And yeah, ultimately that always find the value, find some value in the project that you're taking on. If it's something that you choose to take on, or if it's something that you're tasked with, always find the value in it and keep the value central to how you solve that problem, so that you always know that you're getting to the heart of the issue and doing the most effective work that you can be.
How can people reach you if they want to send you questions, to meet you, to exchange ideas, maybe more? How can they find you? Your email address, your website, if you have one?
Yes, my professional and university email address, 𝗍𝗍𝗍𝗍𝗍@𝗃algary.ca.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. It was a refreshing journey to meeting you.
Thank you for inviting me to participate. It's been a real honor to be a part of this project.
At the end of the day, solvers are ordinary people. By the act of engaging in making things better, in innovation, it reveals their exceptional characters. And by making this step forward, they take the act of continuous learning to the next level. We are solvers. We take innovation personally.